Alright, hello, greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sevenaria University. My name is Israel Joseph. I'm the founder, dean, director here at Sevenaria, and I'm glad to have you back with me here at Sevenaria to talk over some current events tonight and also some other philosophical points. Let me first say, if you're seeing this video on Facebook, awesome, hi. But please go over to YouTube and press the subscribe button, click the subscribe button for me, and also click the bell icon so you can get alerted when videos coming from us, from me, from this university is going to be presented to you. So go to YouTube, Sevenaria, Sevenaria University at youtube.com, and click the subscribe button and also the bell icon. But please become a subscriber. It'd be nice to have you over there, see some videos, get some information. Okay? So let's get into what we're talking about tonight. How about that? What we're going to get into tonight, current events as far as what's happening, is Mars is in retrograde. As you know, we spoke about this last time. Mars is moving backwards along the sidereal band every 30 degrees. There's another constellation appearing, and although Mars usually moves in a forward direction as we progress through the night, as you can see, it's moving towards the west. It will be moving backwards and into the sign of Taurus. So Taurus is a really it's a strong sign. It's a direct sign, a direct constellation of an auspicious nature. Now, Mars is the god of war, so Mars in Taurus, a lot of things could happen that we're not really ready for, or maybe things won't. Who knows? Maybe we'll find a better nature in all of ourselves and hold back on what could be a cold winter as far as people's hearts towards one another. A solar eclipse is coming up on the 25th of this month, October. And the sun, a solar eclipse, is really heavy because that means the sun, the boss, is getting eclipsed. It's literally one of the subordinates is moving in front of it to eclipse it. And so this is never a good time because that means the sun has been weakened in some way. Okay, we have the same thing on November 7th, 2022. We have a lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is also because it's happening in Libra. It's a time of judgment. It's a time of people speaking their minds, but we'll get into all of that. So it's a lunar eclipse happening, and both of these times are not recommended to really be, making too many solid plans or decisions around these times. Then we have old Saturn. Saturn is freely moving now because of the sun being eclipsed and the moon being eclipsed. The sun and the moon are connected. Philosophically speaking, astrologically speaking, they're man and wife. Because they are being eclipsed in the sign of judgment, Saturn is free to move around. And in fact, he's in a T-square orbit with the constellation of Cancer. And he's moving into Cancer. And Cancer is very about the home, about the nation, about just people in general. So when you have Saturn moving against Cancer, Cancer is about people and love and family and caring and home. And you have Saturn, who is, we know this planet as Satan. You see the light that emanates from it blocked it's a long story between Uranus and Saturn, the war between those two, and Uranus having it was said in the past, a more beneficial life for Earth. Saturn came and interrupted that light, so we know this planet down the line as who we know as Satan. But Saturn is progressing towards the constellation that usually is the light of warmth. So we're looking at that all happening in the age of Aquarius, which is really, really special because obviously Uranus is no longer arriving here as it was 20 years ago. Uranus is here. And if you're feeling like, you have a self-identity crisis and you feel like no longer one of the pack, you feel in it but not of it, then Uranus is affecting you. And you need to learn how to deal with that because it can be, if you don't deal with it, it can be rather disturbing. And if you do deal with it, it can really lead to some higher elevations. And here at Sevenaria, of course, we talk about dealing with that Uranus effect on the human mind and the effect on the oils in the system, especially what's called the chrism. The effect that Uranus is having as its light is also refracting Aquarius in the constellation of Aquarius. It's home. So we're going to talk about a lot tonight. We're also going to try and talk about getting to heaven. Okay, if I can get to that, how do we get to heaven? Okay, we'll talk about what that concept is. Is there a heaven? Is there a soul? What's that all about? Might have to make part 2, but we'll see if we'll get into that tonight. Depends on how fast we get through all this. Okay? It's lunar and solar. All right? We'll try to start now. Once again, I want to thank you guys for being here. And please go over to YouTube and click that subscribe button if you're seeing this on Facebook. If you're seeing it on YouTube, thanks for watching. Okay, so what is a solar eclipse? All right, so we're going to talk about what the scientific meaning of a solar eclipse is in a second. But let's talk about what it meant to the ancients for a minute. Okay, so solar is the sun. Everybody knows that, right? That's the sun, right? The big guy. So the sun is the provider. All we know this to be true. The provider of trees, the animals, they need the sun, the people need the sun, everything needs the sun. We know this. So the sun was literally like a god. Like a god. The sun is a god, was a god, is a god. And the sun, as a god, was expected to remain visible, in other words. So we're here, and the sun was expected to remain visible. Now I may need to adjust this camera just a little bit. Okay. Because I too am expected to remain visible on camera. Okay, so the sun was expected to remain visible. Okay, so when an eclipse happened, it was a traumatic event for people. They had no real concept that an eclipse and what it was and why it was happening. They had no real concept of how to deal with this. It was phenomenal. So they began to, as the ancients did before we had a chance to develop as a species and study our world and become informed by the creatures that would arrive here periodically or beings that survived previous epochs. We studied our world and developed concepts, but before we became too specific, we basically saw the sun as being enveloped slowly by some sort of creature, okay? Slowly developed, or enveloped, I should say, by some creature till it became a dark orb. And it darkened, the light from it was dark then. It's no more beneficial. This worried them because they said, well, the sun must have died. Okay. And there was they noticed, you know, some clever people noticed there was also a corona. But they said the sun must have died. What happened to the sun? And they would try to look at this, but the corona would, naturally would burn their eyes. And they wondered at this event, as we wonder at it today. And then they would obviously see the event happening in reverse, where the lines were going back and the sun was emerging more and more and more. And then suddenly the sun was back to being the sun. Okay? And this happened on a regular basis, like, it happened a couple years back. It's going to happen again with both the sun and the moon. And so for both the sun and the moon, these people developed all sorts of tales about what was happening to these beings. Some involved dragons, great monsters that came up with, teeth that ate the thing, swallowed it. Some said that the sun was sinking behind some sort of hiding place. Many stories developed about this. The solar eclipse. Okay, and you can go ahead and go ahead and research that. But what I want to talk about is why this is happening. So, as we progressed and were able to, in the time of Egypt, able to predict eclipses, we were able to predict them. We understood why they were happening. And although some may say, well, they understood that a lot later, I'm going to maintain that they understood this in those days. And this is why they were able to predict a solar eclipse. Now, what is actually happening is we have three objects in the heavens. We have the sun, right? We have the moon, and we have the earth. Now, of course, the sizing is not probably appropriate. The moon is probably, of course, a lot smaller, right? But when a solar eclipse happens, what's actually happening is that the moon, okay, is 400 times smaller than the sun. Precisely 400 times smaller than the sun. Precisely. And it's also 400 times closer to Earth than the sun. So just look at that for a minute. 400 times, 400 times. The moon in a solar eclipse is part of a galactic phenomena. I mean, let's consider this for a minute, right? Like, how could this be? How could this moon be precisely the right size to block this immensely large object called the sun from our vision because of its size? So that's what's happening. So the moon, at some point, moves into orbit. It moves in its orbit, of course. At some point throughout the years, it moves into such a position that part of the Earth, or all of the Earth, is treated to what's called a solar eclipse. Because the moon, again, is 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun, and it is 400 times smaller than the sun. And so when it moves in front of the sun, it forms a perfect, to our eyes, the moon perfectly blocks the sun. See what's happening? The moon perfectly blocks the sun from our vision. And that's what's happening. The moon moved into to block the sun. So if, in case you didn't know what was happening, and then of course it leaves a corona. And in a lunar eclipse, it is the Earth, right, that is blocking the sun. And we're going to talk about that. The Earth is blocking the sun, so the moon is eclipsed. And that is because there are mathematics, but we're going to talk about that, okay? So I just wanted to get into what this is, because this is a cosmic phenomenon, that this planet here, which NASA says they crashed a discarded rocket into, and it rang for hours, 12 hours. It's a hollow body. This planet is hollow. It's too close to the Earth to be where it is. It should have crashed into the Earth based on gravity and different measurements, yet it has never crashed into the Earth. It only shows one side of itself. It kind of tilts back and forth, but we basically only see one side when it should be rotating. There's a lot going on with the moon. Perigee, how it moves further away and it comes closer, it seems to. I know they explain that. But the moon is a pretty phenomenal object, and the fact that it's there at all doing this was very auspicious to the ancients. So they saw a solar eclipse as the moon. It was what it was in Egypt. The moon was blocking the sun, and that was not a good sign, because, as I said, the sun is the leader of the planets. Without the sun, nothing would be shining. And so that wasn't a good sign. So all on Earth, what we're talking about as well, is a concept of as above, so below. And that just means that all of this above, all of this is above, is happening here below. And the inverse is true as well. So this is of Thoth of Egypt, and Hermes as well. So as above, so below. So if the sun is really being eclipsed, then that means we have to look out on Earth. And what does that really work out to? Well, the sun is being eclipsed in Libra. Libra is the scales of judgment. the sun is being eclipsed in the scales of judgment. This is the Christ in the four Gospels when he is being judged by the Pharisees. This is what we're talking about in the four Gospels, in a sense. The Christ, the Christos, crystalline force here, the Christ, is being eclipsed in Libra. In the tropical, okay, well, we're talking about Scorpio. So this is sidereal here, and this is tropical. So both sidereal and tropical are not good signs, because the sun is being eclipsed in Libra, which means it's being judged. It's judgment. If you're talking about the sidereal, or if you're talking about the tropical, I forget sometimes how to write. Someone asked me to write in block letters, and I'm always like, okay, I have to think about it now. I'm usually writing in script. So sidereal and tropical, the tropical zodiac and the sidereal zodiac. So Scorpio is not a good sign either for the sun to be eclipsed in, because Scorpio is where is the, of course, he's a backbiter, right? That's what you call a backbiter. And that constellation is about the sting of death, the kiss of death, the K-O-D, the KO, the knockout, the kiss of death. Because in the East, when you are stung by certain scorpions that are going to kill you, right? It sort of looks like that. It resembles kind of like a, I guess I got a drawing so you can see it, like a pair of lips. And if that mark appears on you, they know what kind of scorpion that is, and you're probably going to face death if you don't get help. It's called the kiss of death. Okay? So the sun, if you're in the sidereal system, is being eclipsed in Libra. And that is judgment. If you're in the tropical system, it's being eclipsed in Scorpio. And that's the kiss of death. So in both scenarios, both zodiacs, in both zodiacs, pause this for a second here. So whether you're talking about the sidereal or the tropical, the sun being eclipsed in these signs is not the best sign for the upcoming season of Mars in retrograde. Okay, Mars is in retrograde. This is happening right before this. So it's almost like an omen about Mars in retrograde, which is coming. So we have a solar eclipse as well as Mars in retrograde. We have a lunar eclipse too. And I'm going to talk about this. So whether you're talking about the sidereal, which is happening in Libra, tropical. It's happening in Scorpio. You're talking about both negative omen, a negative omen for this winter. Why? Why? Because this. Because that's going to be happening. Mars is in retrograde, okay? So understand what we're talking about. We're talking about the solar eclipse in Libra, if you're talking about the sidereal system. We're talking about the solar eclipse in Scorpio, if you're talking about the tropical system. Both signs are not good for the sun to be eclipsed in, especially as we're approaching Mars in retrograde. That's the really, not so good thing about this, that we're approaching Mars in retrograde, and here comes the sun and the moon, both being eclipsed in either Libra or Scorpio, and that is just a bad omen, as they used to say. But the reason, again, I'll just say that we're talking about all of this is so that we can protect ourselves by being aware, because what Mars in retrograde means is that tempers and anger and so on are going to flare up, both personally, within the family, with kids, as a nation, as a town, a city, and as a nation, and internationally, if you will. So we're seeing this on television right now, the beginnings of what could be detrimental. So the reason I'm talking about all this is to hopefully curtail some of that that people might think before they act. Because what we're going to talk about next is the lunar eclipse in Libra, and what that means for people, what that means for you, what that means for all of us, as far as that blocking of that light. And it'll be in Scorpio for the tropical zodiac, and as I said, for Libra for the Sidereal. Okay, so let's talk about that. And remember, this is important because Mars is in retrograde. Okay, so let's talk about the lunar eclipse. So basically, it's the same understanding, except in reverse. The sun is the Earth is so many miles smaller than the sun, and so when the moon is in front here, right here, when the moon is here, okay, the sun's light cannot penetrate through the Earth, and therefore the moon is eclipsed, right? The shadow is upon the moon. See how that works? So the Earth is here, and when the moon is here and the sun is here, light from the sun can't penetrate the Earth. And so the shadow from the Earth causes a lunar eclipse. And the same thing in reverse. When the moon is here and the Earth is here and the sun is here, the sun cannot penetrate the moon, and a shadow is cast upon the sun. That's how that works. Okay? So I just want you guys to keep that in mind as we're progressing along, because the same principle at work with the lunar, with the solar eclipse, is the same principle at work with the lunar eclipse. And so that way I don't have to draw all this again, because all I really want to do is tell you the same thing, that on November 7th, where can I erase? November, I guess there's no way to, oh, but it's actually written on the back here. So, yeah, I had it written. So that solar eclipse is happening October 25th, and on November 7th, we have the lunar eclipse. Both are happening in, as I said, in either Libra or Scorpio. What does this all mean? Okay. So let's erase some notes here. Okay, so let's talk about where these events are going to be visible. Okay, so I have, of course, my trusty notes, which I'm going to be referring to, if you don't mind. All right, so as I said, this is happening on the 25th of October. This is on the 7th of November. And the visibility of these two, for the sun, it's going to be so we're looking at the solar eclipse happening, but the visibility of the eclipse is going to be centered in Northeast Africa, which of course includes like Egypt and all the other countries along the northern coast of Africa. Okay, all of this region. Then we're going to look at Europe, which all of Europe is going to see this eclipse. On October 25th, there will be a solar eclipse which will darken North Africa, the home of the Bible, the home of Islam, the home of Christianity. It will darken Europe, the home of the modern world. It will darken the Middle East. Can you imagine? So we're looking at a solar eclipse that's darkening lands that are very, very important in world events right now, especially Russia. This is going to be seen in parts of Russia, not the entirety of Russia. Right? Russia's a huge trouble. I don't think it's going to be seen in the west of Russia at all, but in the east of Russia, that's going to be seen. And this is a heavy thing because of Russia's, what's happening over there. a solar, again, we're talking about, you know, and if we're talking about as above, so below, then if there's a, then we have to worry about leadership. All of this. And decisions. Because of the solar eclipse, the sun being leader. You see? Like I said, you can do with this what you want, but this is just how the ancients saw things, and this is might be important for us today. Because, you know, we're not really able to contact this kind of information on a regular basis, so this might be important because everyone here is facing Mars in retrograde. So Mars in retrograde in conjunction with your solar eclipse here makes for not a good time to be making decisions from, well, Mars goes into retrograde on October 29th to the 31st. It begins its progression backwards, away from the duality that's been keeping this calm, you see? All right, so Mars, so Mars was in Gemini, and that's duality, and it's moving backwards into Taurus, and that is direct. This is bold. So Mars, god of war, is moving directly back into Taurus the bull. Direct, instead of duality, which we've been dealing with for the past few months. You know, war, no war, love, no love, a real Martian world of duality because of its association with Gemini and its warlike nature. And it's been producing a lot of war here because the sun is in an auspicious cycle ready to make an eclipse. And this is happening as Mars too is retrograding into Taurus. So it's almost, well, it hasn't begun yet, but after this solar eclipse, Mars will begin its backwards trajectory into Taurus, away from Gemini. So in the sign of the bull is Mars, god of war in the sign of the bull, after a solar eclipse. The leader eclipse, then 2 months of Mars in Taurus, and then Saturn. And we're going to talk about what's happening with Saturn. But first we're going to talk about the moon. So that's the visibility of the solar eclipse, okay? That's what's happening. Northeast Africa, Europe, Middle East, Russia. Leadership affected all of this. Bad time to make decisions. Come on, guys, no war. Bad time. This whole next winter. Mars goes into retrograde for the winter. As I said, bad time to make decisions. Because of its nature. Because of its nature, Taurus, the bull, the nature of this bull, plus the god of war, the G-O-W, the Gao, plus the Gao, the bull plus the Gao, going to be pretty direct stuff. Hardcore. Be careful. Okay? So that's the visibility of the solar eclipse. Next we're going to talk about the visibility of the lunar eclipse. Okay, be right back. Okay, back. And we'll talk about the lunar eclipse and the visibility of that. Where is that going to be? Well, that's going to be West Coast. So I'm looking forward to that because I'm out on the West Coast. So of America, the Americas. Alaska, of course, West Coast of Canada. Alaska. And eastern Russia. And here we are again. So both eclipses are happening over Russia. One is happening, the sun is happening on the east, on the west, and the moon, the lunar eclipse, on the 7th of November is happening in the west. This is October east. So in 2-3 weeks apart, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks apart, there's going to be two eclipses. Over Russia. And that means deep stuff. Now I'm going to get into what's really happening because this is still Mars. Now at this point, on October 30th, say, Mars begins. Mars starts going backwards. This is October 7th. This is November 7th. On November 15th, Mars enters Taurus. So on November 15th, and this lunar eclipse is November 7th. Oh yeah, so this is sorry. So this is coming off this solar eclipse into a lunar eclipse, coming off a solar into a lunar, and the sun signifies the leader, the lunar signifies the mother. So we're talking about a loss of love. So again, we're talking about, because it's lunar, there's a loss of love, an eclipse, and Mars enters Taurus, retrograde. It's retrograding, and there's a loss of love during the moment of retrograde, which means bad verbal stuff. Watch what you say from November to January, because of this whole complex of events that's attempting to have. You have to understand, these planets are conscious creatures. All the ancients understood that. They are attempting, Mars is attempting to have something terrible happen. It is attempting to push these leaders over the edge, to push us over the edge, to have something terrible happen. And we can't let that happen, right? We have to control this guy's needs by centering ourselves. Anyway, so we're talking about this lunar eclipse. Visibility is going to be the west coast of America. I'm going to be seeing that. And I'm going to actually prepare for this, because I know it's coming. West coast of Canada. So British Columbia, get ready. Alaska. But the whole world will feel the sun and moon the whole world will feel it, but these places will see it with their own two eyes. They will see it. And so let's go ahead and move on to, so we've talked about, basically, let's recap a little bit here. This lunar eclipse, is also, I forgot to let you know, it is also happening in, this lunar eclipse is also happening in Libra. If you're sidereal, if you're tropical, it's happening in Scorpio. Okay? And this is the same thing. Same thing as the sun. Time of judgment, time of bad omen, death. These are not the signs personally, as I said. This is the constellations I'm talking about. Okay? And so there are two different systems, the sidereal and the tropical. We can talk about that at some other time. It's not tropical like Trinidad and Caribbean. One is dealing with the sidereal band as its focus. The other one is dealing with the 5 planets and the sun as its focus. But both are considering both. And one is lunar. The sidereal is lunar, and that's the main difference. So you get about 2 to 6 days every month where these two match. But other than that, they don't match because one is lunar and one is solar. Lunar and solar. So this is why I'm showing you both the sidereal and the tropical. And please, if I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. I mean, I need to be corrected. Correct me, please. But that's as far as I understand. Okay, so that's happening the same way. This kind of loss of love, this kind of loss of. I'll tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so the ability to hide deep emotions is connected with a lunar eclipse. Secrets, the ability to keep secrets. Okay, looking at all this. Deep emotions, secrets. People will express their innermost selves, and this usually happens a few days before the eclipse and after the eclipse. So we're talking about loss of love, right? And we're looking at all this bad verbal stuff. We're looking at all of this okay, November 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. These dates don't be making too much noise because of the effects of all of this. And believe me, if you start paying attention to this stuff over the course of many years, if you're really perceptive, you'll see the difference. You'll see the difference because you'll be moving in accordance with the light. And that's what we are, it's light. So during these days, we're going to get like a lot of, the inability to control feelings and to hide feelings and to keep secrets. And so that's pretty important. But it's only for a short time, a week. But again, what this is getting to is that week is ushering that. Mars in retrograde. Okay? So that's basically your visibility. West Coast, Americas, Alaska, Eastern Russia. Russia's getting 2 eclipses. 1, 2. Okay. And that's, what I said, you gotta watch this because everyone knows what's going on TV, right? I'm not saying anything that's like, whoa, you can't say that because it's on CNN, it's all over the world. We know Russia is at war with another nation, and 2 eclipses are happening here. It's something to consider. The nation is Ukraine, of course. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about. Let's go ahead and talk about a couple other things here. Saturn. Talk about Saturn, okay? Because Mars going into retrograde is one thing, but Saturn, all of this stuff here, basically leaves Saturn free, eyeing Cancer. See, Mars may be entering Taurus, but Saturn is eyeing Cancer. So we have to be aware of this. And what I mean eyeing Cancer is moving into that sign. Saturn is going to be eyeing Cancer or Leo. If you're tropical, we're going to talk about all that too. See, we're talking about tropical and Sidereal at the same time, which is probably a bit confusing, and you know, I'm going for it though. So let's talk about that event. Okay, Saturn entering Libra. I'm sorry, it's not Saturn entering Libra. Saturn entering Cancer. Okay, and what Saturn entering Cancer means. And we'll come right back. Okay, so let's talk about Saturn entering Cancer in the Sidereal, or Leo in the tropical. Okay, so let's talk about that. So Saturn is who we have come to know as Satan. And why? Because it was an old story. Well, it's not. There was an old story. There was an event. It wasn't an old story. It was an event where the planet Uranus was suddenly, because of a change in orbit by Saturn, who began to devour its moons around itself. We know this as the Greek story of Kronos, because Saturn is Kronos. Saturn, it's Satan, on and on and on. Saturn, the actual planet, began to devour its moons, and we know that it's Kronos eating its children. One of the moons survived. It's Jupiter. You know that as Jah, or Zeus. And then there's Mars. So this volatile planet that began eating its moons and changing its orbit blocked Uranus. And Uranus was the furthest that the human eye could see. And they could barely see it. It was the 8th sphere. Saturn is the 7th. When we get to Saturn after death, we return the final light, which is time, to Saturn. Beyond its heaven. Uranus is Greek for heaven. There's also translations that it's son, S-O-N, child. The son of heaven. So Uranus was blocked by Saturn in a volatile state. As Saturn became volatile, began eating its moons. And so Saturn we know as Satan. Okay, so that's all important to understand. And I know it sounds pretty Saturday Night Live-ish, right? Yeah, but, that's really what's going on. And so this planet has negative vibes. Its literal vibrations, its luminosity, has only produced war, according to the last few thousand years of records. This change here has produced war. Okay, and this is before the Greeks, you know, because the Greeks inherited those stories. So You're talking about thousands of years of this happening and people recording it over epochs until us today. So Saturn produces this negative energy that creates war on the planet. Saturn, this negative energy, is entering into Cancer. In the Sidereal system, which is a lunar system, Saturn is entering into the constellation of Cancer. In the tropical system, which is usually a few weeks ahead because it's solar, it's entering into Leo. Cancer is family, country, self. Self, family, and country, and love. And Saturn is entering into that. See what's happening cosmologically? Saturn is entering into the constellation of Cancer, which signifies self, family, and country, like your people. Leo, if you're dealing with the tropical, is the king. You see where I'm going with this. This is all not good, right? Because Leo is the king, and Saturn is entering into the house of Leo in the tropical system. He's the king. Saturn's entering into the house of Leo. It's going to take Leo's house. So as Mars retrogrades, negative vibes and war from Saturn entering Cancer and entering Leo. As Mars retrogrades, Saturn is also going for his. So there's a war in the heavens. And I'm sure that this war is related to the grand conjunction that happened between Jupiter and Mars. I'm sorry, Jupiter and Saturn. Back in 2020. We all remember that. Happened twice. I think it was May and July. June, July. Now we're having this turn where Saturn is deciding, along with Mars, Saturn and the gal, god of war, is entering into our heart. This is also if you're looking at the world, so this is, let me write this over here. So if you're looking at this Cancer, Cancer is the tropic of Cancer, is the highest line that the sun, which depends on a graph, as it, you know, rises higher and during the summer and the winter. The highest it rises in July is the Tropic of Cancer. That's the limit of the sun. The sun cannot rise any higher than the Tropic of Cancer. It cannot go any lower than the Tropic of Capricorn. That's winter. This is summer. So the fact that Saturn entering Cancer and Leo is signifying that it is occupying the sun's, the height of the sun. Cancer, it's not the Tropic of Cancer. It's not the same thing. But the fact that these two are related in name and in essence, if you will, says something. Because that's the highest the sun can attain. We're having Saturn entering into this sign. So Saturn is definitely trying to disturb the sun, the leader. And that means that leaders of all sorts, business leaders, governmental leaders, family leaders, all have to worry about this scene that's happening here. Because we have the solar eclipse, the beginning of the show, on October 25th. It opens the show. The sun is literally letting you know, I am going to be defeated this winter in a way that you've never seen, or maybe in a long time. And it's happening in Aquarius. I haven't even gotten to that. So, I've never seen this. It's happening in the Age of Aquarius, with Uranus in Aquarius. I'm setting in Aquarius, and I'm going to be eclipsed, before Mars goes retrograde into Taurus from Gemini, and Saturn enters into Cancer. So we're having the solar eclipse before all of that. Then we're having the lunar eclipse directly before, letting people's emotions loose directly before the Mars enters into retrograde into Taurus, and directly before Saturn enters into Cancer. And as I said, we have Saturn free eyeing Cancer. Now, what do I mean by Saturn is eyeing Cancer? Well, Saturn, because the sun, the sun was eclipsed and the moon was eclipsed, and Saturn is heading back into the constellation of Cancer the Crab. You see, heading back. And it is forming this kind of a thing, a T-square almost. with both the sun, both the Earth, the sun and the moon. A T-square with the sun and the Earth. I'm sorry. This is the sun, and this is the Earth. And it's forming a T-square with both the sun and the Earth, which means it's literally setting itself up in opposition with the sun and the Earth, moving into Cancer. As its partner Mars is moving into Taurus. Saturn, Mars. And this is what we're looking at. Mars going into Taurus, Saturn going into Cancer. Okay? And so, what does this affect? Mars goes into Taurus, which means war, personally and internationally. Saturn goes into Cancer, which means an effect on the family, an effect on country, all of that, an effect on cohesion of the peoples. And so the Saturn, if you're looking at it from a tropical point of view, enters Leo, and Leo is the king's castle, and the sun being the king, Leo is the sun's house, the house of light. Leo is the house of light. It's the house of July. It's the house of Judah. House of light, because the sun is strongest in July. And the sun is strongest in July, and Saturn is entering the constellation of Leo. So that's significant. That there's a juxtaposition between the month of Leo and the constellation of Leo. Consequently, Book of Numbers, chapter 2, chapter 6. I think it's chapter 2. They numbered Judah. And it's interesting because Judah was set on the east. Just as a, I digress. But Judah, let's make a little box here. Judah in the Bible was set on the east. Now, I want to teach here that the Bible is also, there are many ways of reading the Bible. It's metaphysical. It can be about the mind. Like all of the cities and all of the people that were conquerors or great people is either the mind, the sun, or constellations. And in this case, I'll show you that Judah is set up in the east there. In the brain, you have two hemispheres, the right and the left. Now I know that's backwards, but if you're facing north, your right brain will be to the east. That's why I put it backwards. The left and right hemisphere of the brain. Right? You have a brain here, and you have a left and right. Now I'm facing, this is correct for me, but this is facing east. You have this happen to you. And the right brain is the light. It is the artistic, more philosophical brain, the God brain, the left brain is the animal brain. That's why you should left that alone and get right. Think with your right brain, you're thinking more artistically. Now you need some gold from this. This is why Joshua invades this, breaks this wall, and then invades this city to take the gold. He kills the children. The children are really thoughts. He kills the animals. Those are also lower thoughts. He kills the kings, and all those are the highest thoughts of the left side, the most animal nature. But he takes the gold out of the city after he breaks the wall, because the animal nature has something to offer, right? Survival and everything else. So he takes that out into the right brain. And that's Joshua coming up from the spine into the brain and sacking the city. So it doesn't have to be an actual city. It could actually be your mind and the wall between your hemispheres and the right brain. Joshua's the story of the right brain conquering the left brain. But anyway, let's move on. So Judah is light, because it signifies light in the month of Leo. July is the month of Leo, and Judah is another word for July. And in the book of Numbers, the amount when they numbered in Numbers 2, when they, or if it's 6, forgive me, but Numbers 2, when they numbered Judah, who was in the east, on the right side of the brain representing light, the number was 186,400. And that number is the exact speed of light. Isn't that interesting? So Leo is the house of the speed of light. Saturn is entering the sun's house. It's entering Judah. Saturn is entering Judah. Wow, that's really something. Saturn's entering the family. Satan. This is Job. We're looking at Job. Time. Job. The time of Job, or Job. The time of Joe. No Joe King. I'm not Joe King. The time of Job. Job, because Satan in Job 1 and 2 enters into Job, who is the son, enters into his house, destroys his family. You see? In the house of Leo. So we're looking at the book of Job. Again, Jupiter and Saturn was the meeting in Job. That's Job 1. This here is happening as Saturn enters into Cancer, home of the house, and Mars gets into Taurus, is Job 1 and 2. An attack by Saturn or Satan on the Cancer, on the house, on Cancer. He is attacking in this, and this is the Sidereal. So Cancer and the Sidereal. Saturn is attacking self, family, country, people, love, and attacking love. He is attacking, it is the tropic significant of the TLC, Tropic of Cancer, of course, and he's attacking love. Fellow love. That's what's happening with this Cancer business. It's Job. It's the book of Job in the sky. It's the book of Job in the sky. What's happening here? This is Leo. This is what's happening with Leo. Leo is the light. July. The sun's house. Sun house. Judah. Saturn, if you're looking at it from a tropical standpoint, this is a sidereal, is entering the sun's house. Leo is light. Saturn is entering the house of light. Cancer family. Saturn is entering the family. He wants to enter the sun's house so he can destroy the family. Saturn wants to enter the sun's house to destroy the family. All this winter, there will be a war in the heavens. Not just on Earth, because what we're really talking about, as I said, is the principle of as above, so below. Everything as Saturn enters into Leo's sun's house, Leo and Cancer, is happening here. Look at the news. Look at the news. Look at the war and the violence and the uptick in crime and everything that's happening. Instead of, people say it's supposed to be I say it's the Age of Aquarius. People say they agree, right? But why is it so violent? Well, we're actually in a transition point where the Age of Pisces died. It's gone. The Age of Aquarius is picking up. We're here. That's why all this is happening. We are in a transition point. And so Saturn used to rule Aquarius. Now Uranus is ruling Aquarius. I think I need another whiteboard. I need a larger whiteboard. Right? So Saturn used to rule Aquarius. Now Uranus is ruling Aquarius. So that doesn't make Saturn happy. Saturn's been kicked out. Right? And now it's raging, heading into Cancer. And he has his buddy, Mars, heading into Taurus. And we on the earth are this event that is happening equals the earth at war. We're near talking about nuclear war and all of that. This is crazier than it's been since World War II, right? So we're earth at war. Again, all of this is controllable. This can be controlled and managed if we pay attention to this. This is what Sevenaria is doing here. Sevenaria is giving you the ability to pay attention to this happening and to control this earth at war and families at war and people at war and your personality at war. Control that, because you understand Saturn is what? Moving into Cancer. Now I'm being repetitive because all of this might be new to some people who say, what is he talking about? Being repetitive is also a technique that the Bible uses as well. To be repetitive is to have people remember stuff. So I'll be repetitive. That Saturn right after we have a solar eclipse on October 25th and a lunar eclipse on November 7th, both in either Libra respectively for Sidereal zodiac, or in Scorpio for the tropical zodiac. Right after that, we're having Saturn make a move. Okay, because I think I'm going to wrap this up here. We're going to have Saturn make a move, and Saturn's going to move into Cancer. Okay, and you know, for that I'm saying this for the sidereal, and I should have said that, but it is the sidereal. Okay, and so the equivalent to the to the tropical would be Leo, which I did mention. Yes, of course. So I didn't write it here. That's the problem. So Cancer, Leo. And this is Taurus, okay, and the sidereal will be Gemini. That's huge. This is huge heavenly stuff. We can already see what, you see, this is not hocus pocus. This is science, right? This is science. This is astronomy. And this is the evidence of the astronomical happenings, as above, so below. As above, so below. Astronomy. This is literally astronomy. This is the astronomy. And this is the astrology. This is the logy, the astrological thing to think about. Astrologically, astro meaning the stars, astro, look, the same words here, right? You can check it out. Astro, meaning the stars. And the study of the stars. Onomy and ology. We know what ology is before we know what onomy is. Ology means to study. Ology means what it means, the understanding. This is understanding it. So naturally, if you apply the astronomy to the astrology, you will see that there is an earth at war. That is the astrology. There you will see that Saturn is progressing into Cancer and Mars is progressing into Taurus. That is the astronomy. See how that works? So we have two things, astrology and astronomy. I want to straighten those things out, but they're connected. They are one and the same. One is understanding the sociological, and the other is understanding the astrological. But they're both trying to be logical. Because one is astrological and one is astronomy. Actually, it's not even a logical. So there is a logic in there, but there's some sort of, you see, that's what I'm talking about. That astronomy is a search without meaning. This offers very little to no meaning. And that's okay. That's okay. They just want to know the numbers. It's just all about the numbers.
But this offers meaning. This is because look at the earth. The earth is at war. Now I know I'm reiterating. But this offers meaning. That is why we need both astronomy and astrology, because one offers the study and one offers meaning. Okay? So let's take a look at all this for a minute. Well, let's sum it up. As above, so below. Saturn is Saturn's entering Cancer or Leo, depending on what you're talking about, it's tropical or sidereal. This is Job in the sky, because if you remember back in 2020, we had a meeting between Jupiter and Saturn. It was called the Grand Conjunction. And that was Job chapter 1. That was Job chapter 1. Oh, excuse me. That was Job chapter 1. When is where Jehovah and Satan have a conversation about Job, us. Then Saturn proceeds to destroy Job. Job chapter 2, 1 and 2, which is literally Satan proceeding to destroy Job. Saturn, proceeding into the house of Cancer, Job's family, with his buddy Mars into the house of Taurus, aiding him with power from the bull to affect not only Cancer, but Job's house. Job being the sun. Job is the sun, and the sun is going to be eclipsed. Job is going to be eclipsed before all of this, and so will his wife, the moon. And there will be 2 eclipses over Russia, one in the east and one in the west, and eclipses all over the world. And after the sun is eclipsed, Saturn will go after Job. As it is written, in the good book, we read, excuse me, we read, and we know in the book of Job, so it says here in Job 6, Job 1:6. So now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Where comest thou? Then Satan answered to the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Have you seen my servant Job? That there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. Have you seen this guy? Saturn? Have you seen this guy? Just want to ask you a question. And Satan answered and said, Satan answered the Lord and said, does Job fear God for nothing? Does he fear you for nothing? Haven't you made a hedge around Job of protection on every side, and you've blessed the works of his hands and everything he's done? But put forth your hand and touch all he has, and he'll curse you to your face. So he says to God, you protect him. But if you touch him, he'll curse you. He's like that. He'll watch. And God, knowing this not to be true, of course, I'm a faithful man. I've been through so many trials. I've been down so far that I can't even see how far I've been down. But I've never given up my faith. And this is something curious about people. And God, knowing this to be true, says to Satan, the Lord says to Satan, behold, all that he has is in your power. Only upon himself put forth not your hand. So he says everything he has is in your power, but don't touch him. Don't touch him. Now we know that was a change later on in the second chapter of Job, when he received sores and sicknesses and was sent outside the camp and taunted by his friends and everything. But we also can understand that this is an astrological thing that happened with the sun that we can talk about at some other time. Okay? And friends being the other planets. Talk about all that. His wife being the moon. We'll get into all that. So Job was tested by Satan entering into his house, destroying his children and his family and his love and his friends and all. So we're looking at Job 1 and 2 now happening. Job 1, the great grand conjunction, and Job 2. So we're in heavy times. This is happening right before the winter. So, when Mars goes into retrograde, into Taurus, and Saturn enters into Libra, we will be with that for 2 months. So, let me flip back over. So, how long will this all be happening here? Lost my eraser. Well, I guess I can use cloth. So this will all be happening, right, for 2 months. Two months of this madness. And that means winter. That means winter. Okay? So, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the book of Job in the sky. As above, so below. Saturn is entering Cancer. Mars is entering Taurus. Okay? And so that's what's happening. I just want to check my notes as usual to make sure that I didn't forget anything. Oh, last time I did forget to read a portion of Mars and what it means to, the different cultures. And I neglected to read something I had taken in Hindu mythology. And so I'm going to do that now. Okay? So Mars in Hindu, remember Mars is going into Taurus, okay, and I believe that would be Aries. No, it's Aries. Yeah. Did I say Gemini? I really apologize, guys. I know people have already put comments on the YouTube. It's Aries. I'm really sorry about that. Glad I caught that. Okay, so let me read about Mangala. Okay, Mars in Hindu mythology, and this was taken from Windows to the Universe. So I just want to credit Windows to the Universe for this. Okay, so in Hindu mythology, the planet Mars is known as Mangala. Hindus believed in the existence of 9 planets called the Navagahara. The planet Mars is identified with the war god, Kititikya, known also as Skananda. It's Skananda. Kititikya, that's a pretty hard one to say, was born from 6 sparks that fell from the eyes of the god Siva into the lake Madras. From the sparks, 6 children were created who were nursed by Kitsaka, the Pleiades. So, it's interesting that we have here a story that Mars, for the Hindus, is also the god of war, as I said in my previous video. And that it was born from 6 sparks that fell from the eyes of the god Siva and fell into a lake, I guess, and solidified, which is actually a scientific process, an alchemic process. And so 2 of these children that were created by these sparks were nursed by the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. Okay. Well, once Parvati, who was Siva's wife, embraced them all together with such affection that she squeezed them into one body with 6 heads and 12 arms. The newborn became the war god Kartikya, who was often depicted riding a peacock called Parvani and armed with a bow and arrow. So Mars was born from these 6 children, being squeezed by their Parvati, Siva's wife, the god's wife, squeezed them all with such love that they became one with 6 heads and 12 arms. Okay, and this is talking about Mars, who we call the god of war. They also call him the god of war as well. There's numerous accounts of Kartikya's birth. Some hymns tell that he was the son of Siva and Parvati. I'm sorry, and Parvati, excuse me, whose union was brought about by the gods for the purpose of creating the god of war, who would defeat the rival of the gods, the demon monster Taraka. And so he was brought about by the gods for the purpose of killing another god, Taraka. Kartikya accomplished this task by using a powerful lance that he had forged from some of the shining rays of the sun god. So a variant of the legend tells that he was the son of the fire god Angi. This is a variant of the legend. This is not the same legend that was told. And the goddess Ganga, associated with the sacred river of the Ganges. Kartikya is particularly popular in southern India, Mars. He is also associated with a particular month of the year called Kartika, which is believed to be the most appropriate for warfare. So Kartikya, the month, Kartikya, Mars, and the god of war Mars are all connected in Hindu mythology. And if I pronounce these names wrong, which I did, forgive me. I'm an English-speaking person, and I should practice better, and I will. But that's basically what's happened with that. That a lot of cultures consider Mars the god of war. So Mars is entering into Taurus, going to power a bull. A bull. Okay? And Mars being the ruler of Aries is very significant. Okay, Mars is and this is the more tropical version as opposed to Sidereal. This is from Cafe Astrology. Mars is a planet of energy and action and desire. It's the survival instinct. It's the leftover nature of the animal nature of man. Man rules over our animal. Mars rules over our animal instincts. For aggression, anger, and survival, our sexual desires come under the rule of Mars. So that's sexuality as well. Whereas Venus rules romantic attraction, Mars is more associated with basic bodily attraction. So really, primal feelings, primal sex, primal war, everything that's physical and harsh, Mars deals with. So Saturn sets up his boy Mars to deal with those kind of aspects of our lives, and Saturn just kind of controls the all about vibe of the whole thing, drives the whole thing. So the drive in Mars differs from that of the Sun in that there is self-assertion rather than assertion of the will and a meaning to help others. Okay, service. So Mars is war. As we just read, Mars is sexual energy as well. So it enters Taurus, it destroys Saturn. Okay. So all of these things, in conclusion, are going to be really important for people to pay attention to as we enter these next couple of months of winter. Mars will be in retrograde from the 15th of next month until January 13th. And so all of that time, we've got to be really careful. And even on past it, because it's only going to be back in Gemini in March. It'll take a little while to get out of there, get out of Taurus. So what can we do? Well, meditation and patience. The two A's, if you will. Meditation and patience is going to carry you a long way. And that goes for personally and for, I think, everyone in the world right now, because when I turn on the TV, I see a lot of sad stuff going on. So we all need to take a chill pill and remember that this is the only world we have. It's the only planet we have. We can't go to Mars. We can't go to Saturn. They keep talking about this planet they're going to find or they found. Well, we're still going to need Earth as our home base. So we need to take care of this place. We need to take care of each other. And at this time, when the planets are moving against us, that's super important. Okay? So I just want to say thank you for being here at Sevenaria. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope I've covered some ground. And we'll talk again. Okay? You guys have a good night. And we'll see you soon. Check us out on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's right below. Look down. There's a subscribe word says subscribe. Just click on that word for me. And let's get those numbers of people watching these videos increased, okay? Because it's important information. All right? And we'll do another video real soon. Okay, guys? Thanks so much. Blessings. Peace and love. Bye from Sevenaria University. I'm Israel Joseph I, Director, Founder, and Dean, and Professor. And just want to say peace. Thank you. Peace out.